Hello.
Hi.
So from the last video when we were speaking about food and how restricted you were in terms of eating the repeated food every day.
Yeah.
And I know part of that was safety because of, when you, like a child, you watch the same programs every day
Mm.
to get you grounded and things like that. I just wanted to go a little bit deeper into that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my thinkings around that was not only did you eat the foods every day, the same foods every day, there's also a conflict within, when we've discussed calories. So what do calories actually mean? Well, to me, they mean a made up thing because I don't believe that calories exist. Um, so that doesn't take it away from whatever anyone else believes, but I don't believe that. The reason being is because nature doesn't have calories. Human beings make calories up.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you can punish yourself with calories, then it's something to punish yourself for. Because if you eat too many, you can say, I'm not good enough or whatever. But for you, you use them as part of your eating disorder. And that there were so many calories going in. Although there were calories going in, you didn't look at the chemicals going in. So when you said that you had a recent visit for a health check, and you stood on the scales, and the nurse said you're at a healthy weight, and you said I've got an eating disorder, so I'm not healthy. But if you were to write that down, say your blood pressure was okay, and you're at a healthy weight, somebody reading that would determine a different picture. They wouldn't visualize or imagine somebody with an eating disorder. So then you're all left with a different picture, more of a rosier picture than actually the reality picture. And that's often what can happen in gaslighting, where, you know, for instance, Hyde used the word, if hell is visited on you from somebody else, then somebody might experience as hell. It was pure hell. And then in the words that seem to be used now, and not with everybody, but as you say, fluffy words, they would use it as they put their infliction onto you. Well, infliction doesn't cut the crust with hell, because you're going to get two different images in your mind, and for that person, how they experience, you might take away how their experience is, like we say child abuse, rather than, well, the child's being raped, literally by an adult. So it's like that. So I can see what you mean when you discussed about, but I have an eating disorder, and yet you're saying I'm at a healthy weight, which look like I'm healthy. But also within that, when you said that, it's also the fact that you looked at the calories, and people often look at the calories of what's on the packet, as you did with an eating disorder. But actually, at a healthy weight, but I've just eaten a lot of chemicals that are now damaging my body. So I'm not healthy. And so you might as well, as I say, weigh rocks. So for you, what was it about that you wanted to do to your body? Because you were harming it anyway. That's the part of self harm and things that you were doing. But why did you focus in on calories, do you think?
Um, they've always played a big part in my life, and I'm, they've played different roles and meant different things to me, but always been important.
Yes.
From about the age of 20. Before that, my issues with food was, I didn't realise at the time, with a lot of things that I did, was like you say about safety, repeating patterns. If I hadn't got through today safely and okay and not hurt, then that meant I had to do everything again tomorrow for it to be the same, so I wouldn't get hurt. And that was like with food, with checking things, with watching television programs, with what I wore, how I wore my hair. Like, I need to repeat that. And that's how obsessions and my routines became part of it. But I didn't realise why at the time. I just knew I had this niggling feeling that I had to do it. In my 20s, calories became a focus, about eating less the better. And I didn't care what the calories were. So it was like anything as long as the calories were low. So I didn't care, like, if it was processed food or anything like that. If it had lower calories, it was all right. I believed what it said on the packet, you know, and if it said 157 calories in this ready meal, it's like, right, that's 157 exactly. I didn't
But
question
no
it.
matter what, from what's in the ready
No,
meal, it doesn't matter
no.
what that might hurt your body
Yeah, I
because
couldn't
it's the
care.
wrong
It
stuff.
could have had anything in it, and
Yes.
if it was some, how you say, like, even if you have a fish pie, there's no fish in it. I didn't care as long as I was having the lowest calorie thing. It when I was with experiencing anorexia nervosa, it then became a little bit mixed up because it was low calories but also with safe food. So I wouldn't have had a Malteser because it doesn't make sense. I wouldn't have had a Malteser with, I don't know, 10, 11 calories in, but I would have eaten 3 apples. It didn't make sense. I was safe with the apples, but not with the chocolate or something like that. It became
Well,
with
actually, you were
calories.
right. When you're speaking about a safe food, unless the apples, got chemicals on,
Yeah.
then it's not a safe food because anything with chemicals on isn't really. Although we eat them, you might as well just eat washing powder.
Yeah.
To be quite honest with you, but it's just in small quantities. But if you imagine the mixture of chemicals, not just that you're going to have more than one in a packet, but also the variety of food with chemicals in is like a toxin putting that into your body. So when you're saying it, rather than have one Malteser, I'd rather eat 3 apples. It's like, well, the 3 apples, if they don't have chemicals on, are actually going to be better for you than
But
Malteser.
in my head, I was having loads more calories in 3 apples than one Malteser, and it was a real contradiction because it was calories mixed with what was safe and what was not. So I was saying I'm going for the lower calorie, but yet I still couldn't eat the Malteser. I could eat more calories in an apple.
But that's why you believe in calories. So the reason why I'm saying I don't believe in calories is because, you know, personally, if you eat organic food, you eat fruit and veg. So say like you just eat fruit and veg, calories don't exist when you're eating fruit and veg. Do you know why? Because it's in line with your own genetics. So it's in line with your body. And because it's in line with your body, you can graze all day like animals do. Do you see what I mean? And you're not going to put weight on. You're not going to put weight on because your body, the foods that are natural, because your body's nature and it's back to your nature. So foods that are natural are going to say, where do you want me? Your cells are going to be full, you're going to feel full. But when you eat chemicals, you've got no nutrition. So the body's going, you can eat something and then before the hour's up, you're hungry again. Because the body's saying, you haven't fed me, I don't know what to do with that. It's washing powder. Do you see what I mean? So actually what you're saying when you're talking about calories is that you'd never learned about food in that way. You'd learn, as many do, is that it's like how many rocks you're going to put in. So it's gonna mean how heavy you are, but actually that's not really the case because when even the you've just forgot the feeling of fullness. You can't remember the feeling of fullness. It's like, well, you can, because eventually when you overeat, you've overeaten. You do remember. That's not, like the body's defective. The body ain't defective, but that's what you're going to be told so we can sell you these chemicals anyway. But, when you eat, when you eat a plate of what you're supposed to be eating and your cells full, you do feel full, although you wouldn't think you would because we're so used to eating this bulk. Now, if you eat bulk and carbs, you feel the fullness. But when you fill the cells, you feel that your cells are full. That so you're not hungry.
Well, I didn't care about any of those things.
But what you're saying is that nobody taught you about those things. So you felt what you'd been taught. If I eat these are bigger than that, and that kind of made sense for you, didn't it? That if I eat these big 3 rocks instead of this one, then that sounds how you've been taught. Like I say, I don't take it away from anybody that's been taught different. People can believe what they want, but when you look in nature, it just remains the same. Do you see what I mean? It's like you watch animals what they eat, and they don't have calories, and yet they fare better than we do. So to me, I can't, as I say, no man can make an apple, so I can only look up to the one that made the apple, whoever that is. Yeah.
So you're right. When I was in that anorexia nervosa, things didn't make sense, and I would make things fit with what fitted with my head. And so it was about safety, it was about low calories, it was about,
even though you weren't safe.
Yeah.
What was safe?
I don't know. It was just like there were certain foods that I wouldn't even. It sounds bizarre, but I totally believed it at the time. That if like I was cleaning away in the kitchen from my parents' like meal or anything like that, and I got like a little bit of butter or margarine on my skin, I couldn't deal with it. I'm like, the calories are going to absorb in my skin. I'm going to get fat. I'm going to put weight on. I'm going to eat too. It's going to be classed as eating too many calories.
Okay.
Nothing made sense, but it did to me. And then like I say, it's morphed through different stages. Then with anorexia nervosa, when I was at home, like I say, I was just eating less calories, the better. And the less I ate, the better. I felt I was succeeding. The less I weighed, the better. It was like a competition that I never won. It was always, I could do better. I could do better. Striving for the next lower.
So nothing was good enough what you were doing.
Striving for the next. Sometimes there was an element of relief, like when I got on the scales, I hadn't put weight on, but then there were, I haven't lost weight. And oh, thank God I've lost weight. Thank God I've lost weight. And there were elements of relief, but never enough. And I think then my relationship changed with food when I've talked about before, when I went in the inpatient program, and that was just all about getting loads of calories in you, regardless of what they were. And then after being in there,
equally, like we said before, that equally the putting loads of calories was also putting loads of washing powder in.
And to be fair, a lot of the hospital food tasted like washing up liquid.
Right, okay.
It was terrible.
Yeah, ultimately having lots of processed food that you ate, but as long as you see, then that would be deemed as a healthy weight. So we've just got more rocks, but actually you were still unhealthy because now you were full of chemicals. Yeah. But we could say, well, it don't matter about them. We don't bother. Yeah. We don't bother about.
I was discharged at healthy weight. My target BMI, which everybody knows BMI don't mean anything because it's inaccurate and stuff. So I was discharged when I'd got to my healthy BMI. I hadn't learned about food. I hadn't learned about nutrition. I hadn't learned about anything. I just learned how to put on weight to get out of there.
Well, I think what you relied on is because you're in this. We have these places that are care, health. So you're relying on the people in that to have already sorted out what health is about. But then when you go into it, it's like going into the Hansel and Gretel house. It's full of all these nice fancy words, and you go in, and it's full of all the nice fancy sweets. But ultimately, when you get inside, it's not what you thought it was.
And at the time,
for you anyway.
Yeah, at the time, I didn't realise it. I was their biggest advocate about how marvellous that they were going to solve my eating issues, how they'd saved me, and how grateful I was. And I even did publicity for them and about how good this service was.
So it became about them.
Yeah, it isn't about reflection that when I was discharged, just because I was a healthy weight, it was right, go off now, come back when you've got problems again. And upon reflection, I came out of there discharged as a healthy weight, thinking everything was going to be marvellous. As soon as I got home, really, everything that I thought about food and calories was just the same.
Because it wasn't, because they'd come out, well, you'd gone in hospital and they didn't put the fire out, they just switched your alarm off. So that's what they did. But they switched it off with chemicals or whatever. So did you realise, or at what point, that actually what you was doing wasn't about weight, it was about actually being invisible, because that was your biggest thing, that you thought people couldn't see you because you were invisible. And that's what you wanted, not to be visible to anyone. Then you were safe if no one could see you. Because if you became, you were your perpetrator's center of attention, then you didn't, you wanted to be invisible in the world. So that's what you wanted to be. So the best way to be invisible is to get as thin as you possibly can.
When did I realise that? A lot of years after being treated for many years with an eating disorder, with depression, with low self-esteem, with self-harm, and because I wasn't responding to, I still had the eating disorder, I still had the negative and all this kind of stuff, when the doctors or the system said I should be better now, I've had that level of intervention, I got given the label borderline personality disorder. Yeah, because at the time it was okay to say you can't cure those people, you can't help them, they're going to be permanently like that.
It's again, you're defective, their system isn't defective, so we're not going to look at this but you're defective, and therefore, if you were to cure everybody in the world, the hospitals would have to close down, wouldn't they? So why would you? Do you see what I mean? You've got to ask yourself that question. How much money would be lost for all those people? When the factory closes down, it's like, oh my God, I've lost my job. If we were all well, how many businesses do you think would have to close down? So really, when you think about it, it doesn't really bode well. It's okay to switch our alarm off to keep us chugging along for a while until it happens again. But you've got more chance in a business to make money if you can keep people coming back. So why would you cure them? And I'm not saying there aren't some people that are cured out there. I'm not saying that hospitals don't have the purpose. I'm not saying that. But in this instance, for you, it shows that well, let's praise us so people will come in. But how many people were helped that you witnessed being helped? So I can't speak for everybody that were helped, but how many people did?
Well, everybody I came across through the eating disorder service and those services that I had around that time, that 10 years in my 20s, everyone who I know of or are still in touch with, they're still ill, they've still got the same diagnoses, or they're dead due to their illness. Two I know who have died from the being low weight and the impact of being refed, being low weight, being refed had on the body. So two that's died.
I guess it's that as well. Yeah.
Nobody I know or have come across in my 20s has got well.
So that's the thing, is when you're inside a little box and you've learned something. So say you've learned something and your brain's inside this little box, so you can't really think outside the box because you've been taught that this works. And then there has to be more accountability, I think, for if you were to hold an individual accountable, they'd be more likely to look outside the box and say, this isn't working.
They held me accountable. I wasn't working.
But that's what I'm saying. Not holding you accountable, holding that system accountable, the individual people accountable, to say, if you care, then this is just the way we do it. Well, the way that you do it, if it shows not to be working and people are dying, rather than blaming them, if you could help more people, why not look outside the box and say, is there something else we need to be doing here? Does this, I mean, if you know it doesn't work and you can say why it doesn't work, why not just ask you and say, what do you think would work? Well, I believe that would work, but it's not working. Why isn't it working? Because I've got other issues going on. And I think for you as well, that being able to speak about that as well, to say, something needs to change, doesn't it? That people are dying in a healthcare system. And at what point do you take accountability for the harm that's been done to people that go in this beautiful building with this beautiful name of care and health and all that? At what point do people, it's kind of, I would term it anyway, I'm not saying that it's the right term, but the only term that I can think of would be Stockholm syndrome, that we keep going back to the same thing, and we keep getting the same result, but we ever hope for better.
Oh, I had all my faith in the doctors. I believed everything that they said. I believed all the nice things that they said to me. I took all the bad things that they said to me. They were like my gods. They were going to make me well.
So was that helpful for you? All the bad things that some of the nasty things of verbal abuse, that even that you would trust a doctor that verbally abused you. When COVID, I remember in COVID, and there were people that were saying there were doctors in the medical field, and I was attacked for not having the not physically attacked, but verbally attacked, called all kinds of names from a doctor, and my response was that, well, I'm certainly not going to be injected by a verbal abuser. I'm not going to do that because, and then now I wonder how many of those that put it all out there on YouTube, that were calling people names, that were saying they're stupid, saying this is all good stuff. How many videos are out there now of those people apologizing because of what they've found out now about that? I wonder how many people still trust and go get things injected into them still, because they still go back in that belief system, because you're programmed with this belief system, as we all are. If as soon as somebody's ill, the first thing you're going to say is, have you been to the doctors?
Yeah.
And yet, what's been revealed, and I'm not saying that they don't intend to help, I'm not saying that, and I'm not saying that they don't help, but you have to have a look at that. You have to have a look and say, I wonder how many have held their hands up and said, to those that have been impacted by what they've been injected with, those that it's impacted, I want to apologise. So I wonder how many they are. I mean, I've not looked, there might be. I don't know.
Doubt it. Yeah. Because the people that, treated me during those times still stick by that process, still stick by what they've done. And it was only, and I think during going back to a couple of things you said about calories and things like that, and about wanting to disappear, I didn't know that was the issue with my eating disorder. I believed what they said, which was, it just happens. You just got a bit low self-esteem. We'll sort you out. The doctors will sort you out. We'll refeed you. Everything will be all right. And I said, I don't want to just be refed, but still left with a messy head. Oh no, promise me we won't do that. And then, because things weren't going as planned and stuff, like I said, I got that label, borderline personality disorder. Then the intervention and support it stopped about being helping me. It was just about making me cope, rather than seeing that there was a treatment or an improvement. It was about, how can we just let you live with this and not it, I don't know, and it was all about management then, and managing the thoughts and things like that.
And I think what you said as well, you said it in one of the early videos actually, that you were coping with it, and you were given all these promises, and when they weren't fulfilled, you're constantly being handed stuff. You're given this. So you're given that, rather than saying, let's look here, instead of looking at you. But the other thing I think is quite poignant is that when you said that you were going to be helped, then what you're given is another label, that you've got a personality. It's borderline personality disorder. But the umbrella term is trauma. And the very thing that you didn't say is that, and even back then on I think it was the original video, the first video that we did, nobody looked at the trauma. Nobody looked at why. They didn't look at the fire. They just looked at how much they could switch the alarm off. And every time the alarm got louder, they just kind of put another blanket on. And so another blanket came on with a label to say, well, you're defective, you've got a person, and it doesn't matter how many labels you get. It's like, then I mean, there are that many labels now, it's unbelievable. It's like the human being is buried in labels and then becomes a character of the label. So what do you do on the label? Well, it's an action that I do. What action do you do? Well, I might do this. So if I tap that 10 times, now you're going to give me a label of I've got ADHD. So it's do you see what I mean? But these are safety mechanisms that you do it. So why give a label for something? Oh, well, we need labels. Well, we need labels because we're telling that you'll only be addressed with a label. But what about what happened to be a human being? So the very fact, you know, when I told you the story of the table gets everything put onto it, doesn't it? It gets a cup put onto it, it gets all that. So let's say, like we did before, this cup on this table. So this it's quite nice, that table. It was shaped and everything. Well, it's got varnished and it's got lovely paint on, and it's a lovely table. And then give it a label. So we'll say this label is now the table's anxiety. So the table's then just going to be focusing on the anxiety rather than anything else. And then you could put something else on the table and say that's stress. And then you could put, oh, that's a personality disorder, none of that. So the table's just got loads of, so you're going to then, when you introduce yourself, or if you introduce yourself, people rarely speak about themselves. You know, you could be on game shows or whatever. And it's like, the only thing you'll tell somebody is everything you're not, everything that you didn't choose when you came here. So what did you choose? Well, I didn't choose my name. So when I go on there, you know, when I say I go on a game show, it's like I'll tell them my name, but I didn't choose it. And then you, well, what do you do for? I do this. I'm a human doing, but no one actually asks you about you. Do you see what? And you forgot so much about you, like the table. Like, so look at the table, and let's take the name off the table. So say the name Susan. The table's called Susan, so we'll take that off. And then you see the shaping of the table, how it's being shaped by someone else. And it's not even a table. It's like we get taken so far away from ourselves that people actually forgot to name it a tree. It is part of a tree. And it's never going to be named a tree again until I've named it. Do you see what I mean? So it's like you're putting your cup on a tree, and that's how it came here. And that's how it was made. And then we shaped it, and that's what happens to us. So we're no more than any other object that gets shaped and labelled. But only this is more fortunate than we are, because this now only has one label. It's going to be called a table. It might be a side table or whatever, but it's ultimately going to be called a table. And yet the human being gets stacks and stacks of labels. In fact, they seem to want more labels now because they want to stand out. So I want another label, I want another label, and I want another label. And it just seems like insanity that why do we need all that when a human being has come on this planet and experienced something, that might be horrific or hell or horror to them, and they've experienced that, and then they're reacting to you know, as we say in therapy, you're reacting normally to an abnormal situation, but your reaction is being labelled as defective, and that does not make sense to me.
And that's what happened in my 20s. It was those labels. And you asked, when did they start looking at me? They didn't. They acknowledged that I had low self-esteem, but never questioned why. It was just a given. It's come out of nowhere. You've got no self-esteem. And in that late 20s time, that's when, with calories and about managing, I was stabled at a healthy weight. I was very calorie obsessed, but this time, because I'd learned that you could eat different foods, it was ready meals, and that's all I ate, or ready meals and fruit, because fruit, I could manage the calories, and ready meals, it said it on the box. So I felt safe, but didn't realise that I was doing. And then I started binging, and it was like, to be fair, the hospital and the doctors weren't bothered about me binging because it kept me from being anorexic again and going underweight. So for them, it was all about managing. Yeah, but you're binging, but it's not that much at the minute, and this, that, and other. And it wasn't till I was 30, and I thought, I can't carry on like this, managing, this isn't living, this isn't. I'd started to lose some of my faith and belief in them.
Because I guess your quality of life, I'm just going to turn this down a little bit. The quality of life, you know, it's like almost like your weight outweighed pardon the pun, your quality of life.
Yeah.
And so what you were addressing is, you know, to the doctors, they're saying, well, you're at a healthy weight, so we're not really worried about that. It's like, but shouldn't the whole of you?
Yeah.
Do you
and
go?
I
Does
might
the
be a
whole of you
healthy
go in
weight,
there?
but
Yeah.
I've got to have this certain ready meal on
So
a
you
Tuesday.
just a weight on legs,
this,
you just rocks.
Yeah, this ready meal on a Wednesday, this ready meal on a and go around that in a routine, and be petrified of slipping outside of that, and then when having binges. And so in my 30s, I said, is there anything else? I can't go on like this. I can't go on learning to manage. I want to explore why I'm like this. And that's when they said, and I can remember it clearly, as a last resort, psychotherapy. And that was seen by the medical profession as a last resort. And that's when I was noticed as a human being. He didn't want to know about labels, didn't want to know about anything. He wanted to know about me.
I think because
that's where we come.
Yeah, so I think it's the education. Is that, as I said before, that the medical model was devised by Rockefeller, who was a businessman, and there's a quote. Well, there's a debate about the quote, so I don't know if he said it, but he said, "I want them to work, not think." So I don't know personally if he said it, but there's a quote out there, kind of a bit of a debate. But ultimately, there seems to be something in it. And the reason why there seems to be something in it is because you can make more money if you can divide the body up into different parts. Well, you're a whole human being, but if you can break you up into different parts, then your parts are worth more money. Because if that's why when you, so like you go in as a one person, and now you're going to be broken up into different parts. So your eating disorder, you can go over there. You got diabetes, you can go over there. If you've got a heart problem, you can go over there. And then each one of them can give you a tablet. Do you see what I mean? So if you get, and that came about by women, from what I found in my studies anyway, is women being on the contraceptive pill. And what he'd realised as a businessman is, we could make a profit here, as you would in business. You can make a profit here if we can keep people medicated, as women are on the contraceptive pill for a long time. If you can keep them medicated, yeah, you can make more money. So then it was devised by, I think it was his lawyer or solicitor or somebody, and it was him that wrote the medical model. And he liked to donate lots of money to universities. So, you know, when you've got lots of money, you donate them, you kind of give them a little nudge of this is what we want to teach. And that's why with any place, really, the books that you read are in our libraries, and you'll have a reading list that we give to you. And so this is what you're going to learn. You're going to learn what we tell you that you're going to learn. But sometimes when you're not, you know, outside of that, that's, you know, when you explore, what does somebody else say? You know, because we believe this, because we're all guided, you know, in that way. Like you think flocks or schools of fish, there's a leader, there isn't. They're all there together. They're all a school of fish. That's why lots of different species of animals and wildlife and all that can live together in a harmonious way. Although the wild, so some are hunters and things like that, we can't. We can't. You get somebody in a different colour. You know, mine's different colour to you, and they can't live together because somebody will come in and start injecting lies about that one and lies about that one to divide you. And people do it in families, don't they, with their children. And the parent might whisper about that one and whisper, "Oh, you're not as brainy as she is," and then it's going to start rupture. Do you see what I mean? And then that person becomes powerful. But these people, like we do as well in society, or like with politicians, they'll fight each other, but they won't turn and look at the one that did that to them in the first place. They won't say, well, why are we fighting each other? It's our parents, but people as adults can live, you know, like that for many, many years with a rupture with each other because of things in their childhood that had nothing, they didn't start. And that's how society can be, because it's, you know, and it's run off that. So when you look at, when you look at that and you see, well, nature can live together very peacefully because it doesn't have that. So why do we have it? Well, nature's sane. And you know, I think it was Watts who said people that are insane don't know they are. You've just normalised it. Many years ago, a very old book. So yeah. So it's I think as well for you, it's that that's what you're experiencing. Your experience part of a medical model that you're not going to fit into because you're not an object. You're a human being. So for you, it didn't work. Yeah. So it's like, why would it work? Do you see what I mean?
And
so
it was
I'm
only
not
when I
saying
came into a therapy when I was seen as a whole, seen as that whole person.
Yes.
Labels were gone, separation of things were gone, and that not this is what it's like. It was let's wonder why. Let's go back. Where's that come from? Instead of saying you've got an eating disorder and saying your calories, like you said, go back. Why is that important to you? Why is being lower important to you? Why is it's disappearing? And that it's only so it's many years ago after being diagnosed with eating disorders that exploration happened, and I'm understanding it now. Actually, calories and things like that were about disappearing. Why do I want to disappear? And it all come out about linked with the sexual abuse of when I was a child and all those kind of things. All that was missed with the medical model.
I think as well, one of the big things is that what's like I say, people worship the science god, but it seems very unscientific when you're learning the what, why, where and when. But it seems we stop the why in a certain area. Do you see what I mean? So if somebody were describing the somebody that they knew were ill, and I said, do you know why? And they went, well, I've been told. So the doctor said, this is what's happening in the body. Well, why is that happening? They looked at me and I said, but you haven't described why. Why did they get it in the first place? Because this is happening, this cell's doing that and that cell's doing, but you haven't described why. You've described what's happening, but you haven't described why it started happening. And so that's where you're left with almost that we're defective and things just start to happen. You see what I mean? But you know that your illness did not just start to happen in a healthy environment. That's why we say you're reacting normally to something abnormal. And that's what the body does. So then that's what I'm saying, that the conflict of interest is in therapy, looking at why. But it's very unscientific when you go and somebody says, well, it's because this is happening. It's like, but why? And quite often, and I'm not saying for everybody, people might be told why. We're talking about experiences where you haven't, but it's because of what you're putting in, what happened to you. It's because of your experiences, because of what you're being told. It's because of the majority of things that we're being told aren't true. Not about us that we're defective and you believe you're defect then, and then it becomes a thing as illnesses become such a massive business now that everything's just pop a pill. You see, if you get this headache, pop a pill. Don't ask why you've got the headache. Don't try and resolve that. Pop a pill, and it seems to be this all the time. But it's awful to watch. It's awful to see that, and it's awful to have been in it and be in it as well. Because when you're programmed to do that, and you've had it for such a long time, it can be very difficult to start afresh, although it's not impossible. And a long road back to health. And then people say, why aren't you right yet? Because everything's a quick fix. If I take it's like, but it doesn't fix. It just prolongs. And that's the thing. And then you're in this prolonged journey then to try and unwind not only what happened to you when you was a child, but also all the top-ups along. And then the fact that you're being told you're defective, and then it's hard to believe that you're not defective then, because it seems to be the norm to be defective. How do you feel after that?
Okay.
You okay to end?
Yeah.